The Roots of Success podcast is for the landscape professional who's looking to up their game. We're not talking lawns or grass here. We're talking about people, process, and profits. The things deep within the business that need focus to scale a successful company. From hiring the right people and managing your team to improving your operations and mastering your finances, we've got a brain trust of experts to help you nurture the roots of a successful business and grow to the next level. This is the Roots of Success.
Welcome to another episode of Roots of Success podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Cole, and today we have Chris Psencik, partner and vice president of McFarlin Stanford. Today we'll be talking on everything about sales forecasting, pipelines, to dealing with seasonality and closing the big deal. At the end of the day, it's all about relationships and consistency. It's going to be a great episode. Let's get into it. This is great. This is going to be awesome. Chris and I have got a lot of history back in the day. I'll just point this out and I'm going to sort of rip the Band-Aid off. Chris is a wooer and Tommy is not a wooer. If you don't know what a wooer is a winning others over. And that is basically the definition of a salesperson. Right, Chris?
Yeah. And I would say I'll add to that. My wife says you're my work wife when it comes to our day-to-day lives. So this should be a lot of fun.
This is going to be great. Okay, Chris, so your background, you got a hort degree out of that Maroon School in Central Texas. You got a hort degree, and then you went to work for some really good companies to get sort of the baseline of what you are today. Give us some history.
Yeah, so I mean, high level, not too dissimilar from you and a lot of the other people who are probably listening to us today. I started mowing grass when I was a young kid, supported myself all the way through high school, all the way through college doing that. Went to school to study landscape architecture and horticulture. Graduated the landscape design horticulture from Texas A&M, and really started cutting my teeth straight out of school, working for some big players, some large commercial outfits. Tommy, you and I guess we shared a desk back in 2008 years ago.
We shared an office and I think our desks were like 4 feet apart. I think we had 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we had 5 people in an office like 10 by 10.
Yeah, that was supposed to be for one person. I think we sat on top of each other in there. But yeah, you and I, I'll never forget, we started within 5 days of each other back in 2008, and we've worked together ever since. I got to spend some time working in the high-end residential sector, and really that's where I cut my teeth in the sales market and went from production operations and installation project management into sales, and really learned a ton along the way. And so now I get the privilege of getting work with peer groups and helping to facilitate peer groups. Like Tommy said, I oversee all the recruiting efforts for our team in Dallas that recruits for the green industry, and to help teach other small business owners how to be successful doing sales in the green industry. And so it's a lot of fun, and I enjoy working with you and everybody else out there that's looking to grow their business.
Good stuff. So let's just jump right into it. I got a lot of stuff. I mean, I think everyone that's out there wants to know more about sales, closing the deal. How do you manage it and all of that? You did a great job. We worked together for, 8, 9 years. I'm the ops guy. You're the sales guy. We're different, but we're so similar in a lot of ways. Let's talk about this thing called sales pipeline. Give us a description of what that is and how that makes your sales team successful for your business.
Yeah, I mean, high level, what I always like to say is it's your roadmap for how you're going to get to where you need to go, right?
Yep.
It's painting the picture of where you're at today, what do we have on the horizon, and where are the holes? And ultimately, we want to identify the holes because those are the challenges we have to solve. But knowing where we're at today is going to help us really know what the focus is and where we need to focus if we're going to be successful as we move into the sales season. So when I'm thinking of pipeline, I'm not just thinking of that simple Excel spreadsheet or HubSpot or whatever that has a list of names on it. I want to know strategically what's in that pipeline and how does it relate to my seasonality, my workflow, my general work effort that I've got to put out there and commit with my team.
How do you manage that? Is that a software thing? When you're talking pipeline management, what is that? What is that?
I think a lot of times people can get bogged down in the details specifically of like, well, I need to have this, Salesforce or that, or, what I always try and teach to is you need to focus on whatever you have. It's what you do with it, right? I've seen a lot of people with very robust sales systems and sales CRMs, but if you're not utilizing the software or the spreadsheet or the technology then ultimately it's not worth the paper it's written on, right? Like ultimately it's data in, data out, right? Garbage in, garbage out. So whatever your sales system is, whether that be it Excel, be it Aspire, be it LMN, ultimately what we're trying to drive is you have to be able to use it, and use it effectively means I have to collect the data in there. It's not meant to just add time to your schedule and add time to your day. It's meant to drop little clues along the way. And, kind of like Marty and I always say in our sales boot camps, success leaves clues, sales leave clues, the jobs you win leave clues, the jobs you lose leave clues. So spending time kind of digesting and dissecting that, teasing that out, and using that CRM function is what's going to ultimately help you be successful long term. And I always tell people when I'm looking at sales pipelines, yeah, I love the wins, but ultimately it's the jobs you lose that really tell me the most about how successful your sales program is and what and why and where you need to go.
Yeah, it's like managing a project along the way, right? So no different than managing the sales. So you're looking at all kinds of data, and that way you can move forward into what we call sales forecasting, right? You're really good at that. Tell me what forecasting is, one, and then two, tell me what that means for your business.
Yeah. So like right now, let's just talk today, so we're sitting here at the early onset of spring. So everybody's looking at probably a full backlog, so when I'm talking sales forecasting on our accountability calls in our peer groups, what I'm really looking at right now is, a good sales organization right now, let's just say your residential sales organization, a good sales organization right now, residentially should have 3 to 6 weeks already on the schedule, booked, solid, confirmed, production's handed off, locked, loaded, ready to go, right? So thinking through what 6 weeks gets you, that gets me through spring. Next level sales organizations are saying, well, we're not just through May, but we're already looking at June, July, August, right? And so a successful sales team right now is already thinking through my holes for June, July, August. What work do I have lined up? What are my big jobs that are there? Where are my holes? Where are my variables? Where are those things that I need to be looking for opportunities that could be targeted or slotted into those gaps to keep my teams, my crews, and my production effective out in the field? And then when we're thinking through backlog, you should always be thinking through from a forecasting standpoint, like what's the house or what's the project that they just put a construction fence up that they still need to do the demo, which tells me right there, this becomes an opportunity for me in what, 10 months, 12 months, 15 months?
Yep.
So those are the ones where, I always teach people that you got to have your head on a swivel. When that construction fence goes up, you're already too late to the game. Who's the architect? Who's the landscape architect? Who's the engineer? Who pulled the permit? These are our backlog opportunities that are creating future work potential, probably for 2024, maybe for 2025, and so that's where we always talk about just self-awareness of that forecast and kind of where your work is lining up.
Chris, you mentioned sales team. Okay, not everyone's going to have a sales team that's listening to this right now, right? Not everyone's going to have a sales manager like you were, but most people will have a sales person, one person. Can that one person do forecasting and pipeline management?
Absolutely. Okay. And I will tell you, successful salespeople are looking at this on the daily, right? So I can tell you when I was the only salesperson working on behalf of, my team, what I would tell you is I was looking at where was I putting out proposals? Where was I getting hits on the proposals that I was submitting? Was I submitting 3 jobs before I ever got feedback on the first one? I was looking for little intangible clues in the estimating process to understand what type of feedback I'm getting, because that tells me where I'm spending my time and if I'm spending it effectively. Am I going on meeting after meeting after meeting and getting no hits? If so, why am I getting no hits? These are all questions that you as a sales individual can kind of start to ask yourself as you're kind of teasing out your day and figuring out where am I spending my time and am I spending it most effectively?
Yeah, good point. Yep. Communication with the client as you're doing sales. I know you're really good at that. I feel like one of your strong points was always never, ever giving up. And I don't care if the client hasn't returned a call in 6 months. Chris is still hammering it out hardcore. Tell me some more about that. Give me a tip or a little trick for our audience here of never, ever giving up.
Yeah, I mean, for me, persistence is everything, right? And the way I always try and explain it is as soon as I've met that customer or I've presented a proposal, I have time invested in that opportunity, right?
Yep.
So let's just say project A comes to me, says they need something. Let's just say in this instance, I put a design together, I put a proposal together, I present that, and they say, we're not ready to do anything. Okay, great. I already have it ready to go. It's locked and loaded. It's sitting there, right? So the question is, well, do you have intent to maybe do this in the future? Yeah, now it's just really not the time. Costs are going up, inflation's going up. Right now, a lot of people are saying that they're just want to put things on hold. I say, that's great. Is it going to be like this for forever? No, it's not, right? Things will eventually come back around. Economies shift. I've been through recessions. I've seen this happen. So persistence is just saying, well, when will be a great time for me to follow up with you? And just setting that schedule, putting it in my calendar, changing it on my CRM, changing it on my spreadsheet, setting that date and that reminder to follow up with them again. And I say this jokingly, but to me, a project is never dead until either the customer has died, they've moved away, and even if they've moved away, chances are somebody else is buying that house. I still have an active design and a proposal that I could absolutely go and talk to them about, right? There's still concerns on that site that somebody identified that I've already provided solutions for. Other questions I always ask, if the project got installed, well, did they install my design or did they install somebody else's design? Did they install just a front yard and I proposed a front and a back? There's always little things that'll stand out where I can say, Miss So-and-so, there's some opportunities in the backyard that we identified, some challenges. I'd love to visit with you and just, one, talk about it to make you aware. And then two, offer you some opportunities to maybe we can improve it or enhance it. And today may not be the day, and that's okay. But maybe next year's a better time, and if next year's a better time, that's fine, because I know in the back of my head, I'm going to have to fill backlog and schedule next year, just like I'm filling right now. So whether you do the work, my perspective is whether I do the work today or I do the work in 2 years, the work still needs to get done. And if that's still an opportunity sitting on my queue, that's still one more phone call I can make. That's still one more estimate I don't have to prepare. That's one more design I don't have to prepare. That's one more thing that is sitting there that is just a couple touch points every now and then that you can keep that alive, active opportunity. I think the longest I've stuck with something was about 5 years. And that was, just waiting. Honestly, it was about the recession and it was waiting for the economy to turn, which took about 3 years, So patience will provide opportunities in the future.
Well, I think it's consistency more than anything else. That is something that made you successful. Can you tell me, can sales forecasting help alleviate problems with the whole seasonal weather and workforce load? Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So good example, I would say, well, Tommy, we'll go back to some of our history. When we first started working together, we were 100% high-end residential. What do we know about high-end residential in the state of Texas? You kind of go like this, and then you go like this for March, April, May, and then it goes like this, June, July, August, and then it comes back up here, September, October, November, right? What does that mean for our labor force? It means our labor goes like this as well. Yeah. So what's the number one challenge we saw? The challenge we saw was we couldn't teach quality. We couldn't train to expectations. We couldn't afford to pay people consistent salaries above market with labor that ebbed and flowed like that. So it forced us to look outside the box. It forced us to start looking at other opportunities to fill the void. And so as I started to look at the forecasting of what that work looked like, jobs that we were closing, when those jobs were closing, it told me several things, and in the northern market, you see this in snow. Up north where it snows, you may say, we can do pavers when it's cold and snowy. We can do other hardscape functions when it's cold and wet. We can't landscape. We may not be able to do grading, but we can certainly do some hardscape and concrete, things like that. Yeah. In the South, we said we can landscape 13 months a year. What gets landscaped in June, July, and August? And, through some diving into what the market provides us, what we found was commercial offered us some solutions in the low seasons. We found that the commercial cycle would start a job at the beginning of the calendar year, which means they were either wrapping up a job in December, January, February, trying to close it out, and we could get in that slot, or institutional work was open June, July, August because schools letting out, universities are letting out, so they're trying to ram in some landscape projects. But we started to find those opportunities in the commercial sector that helped create that flatline balance that we were looking for from a labor perspective. And as you start to solve those, Now you can start backfilling in some of the gaps and the holes that you're seeing on your schedule, which is so much easier than, am I going to land a $250,000 residential job in August in Texas? Well, no, I'm not. It's
Yeah.
150 degrees here, right? Like
Yeah.
the last thing I want to do is put in grass and turf and bushes. But so is there opportunities to do that somewhere else? There is, and it's just exploring what that looks like.
Good point. Yeah, we got into that little niche of the higher end commercial where you were bidding that stuff 12 to 24 months in advance. Wouldn't you agree? And
Yeah.
the consistency of meeting with the general contractor, the consistency of meeting with the architect, you were great at that.
Yeah.
Which leads me to my next one. You know where I'm going with this. One of the largest commercial projects that you sold, which was a beauty, basically right outside your door. Give us a snapshot of what that was to land that big fish and the uphill battle you faced to land that job.
Yeah. So this was a fun job. We had the privilege of doing a large commercial project here in Dallas, private project. And I will tell you, it was a job that originally originated probably back in 2008, 2009, when I became aware of it. And then over the course of time, it was a battle of will to figure out who was going to be involved in this project, who was going to be funding the project, where was the money coming from, where was the designs coming from. And I'll never forget sitting there and seeing an article in the Wall Street Journal that showed President Bush and his wife walking with the landscape architect in DC. And it turns out it was a subprint. And I think I probably still have the article today. But in the subprint, it mentioned who the landscape architect was of record that was going to be on this job. And alarm bells go off. And immediately I'm like, there it is.
We got to get that one, right?
Yeah. And I knew it was a potential opportunity that I was personally invested, that I wanted to see happen. And then it just became a matter of starting to track it down. I made trips out to the East Coast to go meet with them personally. Did they have any interest in meeting with me? Absolutely not. Did I start to put myself into circles that they ran in? I 100% did. But it was a battle of will to get in front of them, one. And then it was starting to figure out the web and networks that we had, and at that time, residential company trying to get into the commercial sector. I will tell you, it was an uphill battle because we had no business being there. I mean, Tommy, you were there. You remember it. We had no business being there. But it was starting to show how can we show them what we can do? We do good work. We do quality work. We're about customer service. We're about the experience. We're about creating lovable landscapes that people want to be a part of. And so we started figuring out how we connect those dots. And ultimately what we found was, if you follow where things originate, you can back into where they come from, right? And this is that extra step I try and teach salespeople, that it's like an investigation. You just keep peeling back the layers, and eventually you're going to get to the heart of it and figure it out. And then it's starting to connect the pieces and build over the course of time. And the exciting part is as it started to come together, what we found is, man, a lot of the people we know in Dallas are the people paying for this job. And knowing that they're paying for this job, we can do something with that, right? And I'll never forget going to the interview and them saying, you have no business being here, and saying, no, we absolutely do. And the reason why I know that is because the people that are writing your checks are the same people that asked us to be here.
Right.
And, and it's a different discussion when you have that, and the confidence that comes with knowing that we can execute. I was fortunate, Tommy, to have you as the best project manager I've ever worked with, executing on my behalf, right? So knowing that and being able to walk into a meeting gives you a lot of confidence as a salesperson of like, I absolutely know we can do this work. And let me tell you about how we've done this before and how we know we can do this again in the future. And then being able to provide that level of service and quality to them. Now, fast forward, where did that go? 3-4 years later, we land the job. The job is successful. We create some incredible relationships along the way. That springboards into a whole commercial sector that allows us to solve that challenge that we saw earlier of creating that flat line of sales opportunities in a 12-month cycle in Texas, right? And so that allows us to start pushing that up. So now I can increase volume in commercial, I can increase volume in residential. And the exciting part is as you start to increase both, what happens is, the revenue starts to climb with it. The profitability starts to climb with that. The tenure with our employees starts to climb with that. And ultimately, it wasn't about selling more work. It was about creating opportunities for our team. And that's always what I try and relate it back to when I'm working with sales individuals and sales team members is it's not about you. It's not about the sales process. It's about creating production opportunities for team members that can grow lives and careers within our organization.
Yeah.
And so that's always the fun part that I try and relate it back to from a sales perspective in landscaping.
Yeah, that was good. The ups and downs of the Dallas season, it's always like Q1 and Q3 were like total hell.
Oh,
Q2, Q4 were like, woo, sounds good. And we had some seasons that it leveled out. The idea was, instead of making it so dramatic with our team, especially our field staff, that was amazing. And we had long tenure guys that really wanted to do great work. That was sort of my motivation, probably your motivation, to keep those guys going, to build their careers and to fulfill their needs to their family. Let's talk about a couple more things. One is closing the deal. Okay, so you're a sales guy. Give me a tip or two about getting that to the finish line. What's something that gets them over the edge a little bit and goes, yeah, let's rock and roll with this?
Yeah. So it's funny you say this, and I always try and relate it back to is I hate the car salesman approach. I hate nothing is nails on a chalkboard for me than, hey, Miss Jones, are you ready to make a decision on this? Do you feel like you're ready? Are you gonna move forward with this job? And just nag, like drives me crazy. Nobody wants to hire that guy, right? So I've always been of the approach of the consultative sale. The consultative sale to me is, I'm here to solve a problem for you. My challenge is to solve whatever your need is and put you in a position to feel happy with what their end result is, create your vision for what the end product is going to look like. And then ultimately, when we walk away, you're like, that's the most amazing experience I've ever had. Yep. I absolutely will never call or think of anybody else, right? So how do I do that? Me personally, my tactic is simple. I use science. I use horticulture. I have a bachelor's of science in horticulture. And so what do I like to use? I like to use the project to tell me what needs to happen.
Okay.
We're sitting here in May. What do I know? I know right now that it's about to get really hot. I know if I've got a project, I know I don't want to be installing it in July and August. So I'm letting the customer know right now, hey, Ms. Jones, we're getting close to needing to make some decisions. I know you guys have a lot you're working through. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about where we're at. Currently, we've got a backlog of about four to 5 weeks. That's going to put us in May or June. I would love to avoid having to put grass in July and August. That's going to be better for your end product if you choose to move forward, but if it's possible, let's see how we can avoid that window, because I want to do what's right by the plant material, because I'll be more successful getting this in before the heat of summer, where we can get establishment, rather than putting this in August, where I'm going to just be battling just to get enough water on the site, right? Is that something you'd be open to discussing, right? So that's one way. Number two would be, what does the site present to you? We're getting close. You're framed out the house. You've got your sidewalks in. I see they finished excavation and grading. I feel like it looks like they've already backfilled all the curbs. We're at plus or minus an eighth of an inch, which means we're in a position now that we could move forward with the landscape comfortably, knowing that we could execute and get you closer to a move-in date and that final CO that you're going to need to move into this property. But it's going to take us about 6 weeks to complete the installation. Back up, that puts us into a window probably about right now. So to avoid putting you in those awkward situations, I'd love to see if we can have a conversation to get you ahead of that. You see how I'm not making it about me? I'm making it about the customer. I'm trying to solve a need with this particular client, utilizing either what the construction phase is, what the seasonality is, what the horticultural challenges are, to my advantage, because I'm trying to be a consultative support system for them, not just asking to sell them work. Nobody wants to sell work to the guy that's just begging for it. It just exudes, you don't have confidence, right? So use the challenges that the site produces is what I like to do.
Tell me something about the presentation of your estimate or proposal. We figured out that was massive. And when I say presentation, there's a lot of things in factor that included the presentation, right? Give us a few of those things that you've learned along the way of, branding and all those things, and how you present yourself in the sales, right? Like you got one shot to make it. Tell me about that.
So I'll tell you, the first thing I always do is my research. I don't ever want to go present a proposal without knowing exactly who and what I'm presenting to. A couple examples. If I'm presenting to a lawyer, I'm going to make sure my qualifications, exclusions are airtight, right? And I'm going to make some just general stereotypes. If I'm presenting to an engineer, I'm probably going to talk in my presentation a lot about the details about what and how I'm going to build something and why I'm building something the way I am. If it's a drainage, I'm going to explain why I'm going to do the drains the way I'm going to do them. If I'm talking to an interior designer or an architect or somebody in the creative space, I'm going to talk about the vision. I'm going to talk about the feel. I'm going to talk about the textures. I'm going to talk about the colors and the types of plants that we're using and the emotion that's involved with why I'm making the decisions I'm making in that design and sales process. Why do I do all that? I'm doing that because I'm trying to identify with my customer and present to them exactly what it is I know is important to them, right? Like, I know my wife she cares about the organic nature of the lifestyle and the landscape. Why? Because she's a chiropractic neurologist and that's what's important to her. But knowing that before I walk into that presentation, I know I can present something she's going to relate more to versus me. I think far too often as a young design professional, Tommy, you've done it, I've done it. Straight off the boat, what do? You're telling them exactly what the landscape needs to be and why it needs to be that way. And you design it this way because that's the way it's supposed to be done. Right. And we all know that, you can sell jobs that way, but is that necessarily solving the need and the challenge for the customer? Maybe for some, but I would say it's not for all. Right. So I always relate it back to that you hired me for a reason. It's to create your vision and bring that to life. Now, I may help you create what that vision looks like, or you may have it and I'm just going to put it in the ground. But either way, I'm trying to identify what that is with the customer and then lead them down that path and help answer those questions. So I would say as a young professional, that's the biggest thing is learning that lesson. I will say that comes with experience of learning and being in the system and doing it over and over and over and seeing that over and over. So that's one thing. You mentioned presentation opportunities. I personally have always been more details to me are better. I'm of the mindset of my job is to educate you as a customer. And if I'm educating you as a customer, if I'm competing against 3 other companies, if I'm doing my job and educating you as a customer, you're going to ask really good questions. You're going to ask good questions of me, and you're going to ask good questions of my competitors. And my hope is they'll all be able to answer those. And the person that answers them most effectively and most thoroughly is going to be the person that gets the job. And my hope is in my sales process, you're going to feel so confident with the way I've been able to present my information and help educate you along the way that it's a no-brainer. And you're going, man, that kid knows way more than any person we spoke with. Why would I go any other direction? Right. Oh my God. He actually charges 3 times as much. That's okay. That's fine.
So I love this word. We've discussed this in some of our groups, the word specificity. And I like that because let's just be real honest. Salesperson be like, sounds good. They wrap up the presentation and it's over.
Yep.
I'll get back into you. Let me know how it goes type thing. I thought that was okay in a young career. I'm like, that's fine. That's the way but we didn't learn it that way. Right. And so tell me about before you leave that client, what happens and then what happens there on after to try to close the deal or communicate with the client.
Yeah. Number one rule of sales. I think I stole that from Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. You never leave without a next step.
Chris, you actually borrowed it. That's what I learned.
Borrowed it
with the intention of not giving it back, but I think you borrowed it, right?
Yeah. It's you always have to leave a person with the next step, right?
Okay,
and
great.
So it doesn't matter if it's my kids, my wife, a sales opportunity, or somebody in my office. Like if I'm meeting with you and there's something we're discussing, and there's a next step, the next step is always, well, great. Can we meet Friday at 5? Would the afternoon work for you? Yeah, Friday at 5 looks good for me. Okay, good. What am I doing? That specificity, I've left the customer with the expectation of what the next step is. So there's no gray area as to what they can expect next, right? Like they know, all right, we're going to meet Friday at 5 to discuss what's going to happen. I've set a deadline for myself on what next steps look like. Okay, I have to have this done Friday by 5, which means, do I have time to get this complete? And if so, I'm going to knock it out. And if I don't, I'm going to figure out a way to get it done because I've told the customer a deadline and their expectation is I'm going to be there. And the last thing I'm going to do is call them and change the date. And then 3, I'm starting to set the precedent of, what I say I'm going to do, I'm going to do. And 2, I'm going to deliver on those results. And when we get there, my hope is I'm probably going to outspeed my competitors, right? So my goal is if I can do it Friday by 5, is it possible I can knock it out by Thursday and say, Miss So-and-so, I was able actually to get this done sooner. If you're available, I'm happy to meet with you. If not, we're still good for Friday at 5.
Right.
What am I doing? I'm showing them a sense of urgency that helps them go, wow, okay, they're serious about this. I think there's stuff here, right? But that specificity of leaving the next step is absolutely critical, right? My favorite thing to do in the sales process is after I present something, I set the meeting right there. And then not only to do it, I set the calendar reminder, I include them on the calendar reminder, and I email it out, right? So it's on their calendar. There's no reason that they're going to forget it because everybody uses a cell phone for calendars now, right? And it's on my calendar. So it's clearly defined exactly what we're looking for and what the expectation is.
The cool part I like about that is I bet you that client is extremely impressed going, oh my God, now I know the next step. And it's just not out there in Wonderland if I'm going to see that person or when they're going to reach out or when my deadline is. Right?
Yep. Well, the only thing I'd add to that is, Tommy, how many times have you been in a presentation where the customer goes, I reached out to 5 landscapers. I met with 3 and I never heard back from them. Yeah. Well, chances are they plan on calling you back. They just haven't set a timeline on their schedule that aligns with yours, and they just haven't communicated it, right? So that's my sales pitch. Like that's my angle. Like, okay, great. That tells me we're in a game of speed, which means I'm going to outpace and go faster than my competitors because the first one to the market is the one that's going to win 9 times out of 10. If you're the first one that presents that proposal and you're the responsive person that's over communicating, your odds of winning go up exponentially. And we see that time and time again, and so don't be the guy that's just leaving your customer hanging. Nobody wants to be in that position as a customer. And then as a salesperson, don't expect to get the sale if you're not going to do that.
Right. Get it. So Chris, we live in a unique world and economy that's going on, right? What are you seeing now as you're coaching people, as you're running peer groups, and you're that sales hat on right now? What do they got to be doing now in this sort of funky world?
So what are we seeing now? We're seeing people actually have to get back to what traditional sales looks like. What does it mean? It's managing relationships. It's consistency of communication. It's discipline in how you're presenting proposals and what you're presenting. It's understanding you're not going to win every job, and that's okay because my goal is not to win every job. My job is to win as many as I can for as high a profitability margin as I can. So how do you do that? You're doing it through relationship building. You're doing it through communication. You're doing it through quality and consistency. The customer that's winning right now is not the one that's just sitting there waiting for the phone to ring. The one that's winning right now is the one that is still getting inbound calls because they're still proactively going after opportunities and filling their books, which is leading to more opportunities and filling the books even beyond that. A lot of our coaching right now is teaching sales basics 101 of what it means to build relationships and network and utilize those relationships. Because I see a lot of people presenting a lot of proposals now and not just winning every job. And that's okay. And that, we've been doing sales for a long, long time. And it hasn't been order taking like this for most of my career. I will tell you that the last 2.5 years have been a gift. And for those of you who took advantage, kudos, But yes, I would say right now it's 100%. You need to be out there digging, focusing on the relationship, the customer service, the quality, and the deliverables and the execution.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. How your proposal looks. Are you on time? Did you set the appointment in advance? Those little nuggets set you apart from 90% of other companies. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Awesome stuff, man. I have like pages of notes here that you've provided here. I want to share some of these things. These are just great stuff. Sales pipeline management. It's basically like a roadmap of where you want to go, right? It projects out into the future, forecasting out into the future. Is that 3 weeks or is that 3 months or is that 3 years? Your presentation to the client, do your research, right? Get to know them, understand what they are all about. I love that. Investigate, peeling back the layers of the project or understanding that client. Great stuff. The consultative sale, solving a problem for that client. Gosh, that is the number one reasons why they want landscape or hardscape, right? My backyard looks like crap. Yeah. Or I have this drainage issue, or I have an issue where I can't grow grass in here. I don't have anything to entertain my kids. They're driving me crazy. I entertain people all the time. Great. We can help you out. I got 2 more. Leave the person with the next step, right? Before you walk away, figure out the next step. Awesome. In a funky economy, keep the relationships. That's what gets you through. You and I we're in that 2009 nasty recession. And I'll agree with you 100%. Relationships is what kept us going.
Yep. It's all about people and it's all about those relationships. And I will tell you, if you're spending the time and investing the energy in building those relationships, Tommy, you and I, we've been working with the same people for many, many, many years. And there's a reason why we've been successful doing that. And I will tell you, it's through that relationship building and that customer service is really what we're trying to deliver.
Yeah. Even the ops guy can do relationships, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. In fact, I almost say sometimes they're more important than anything. So
yeah, so true. It's a team effort, right? At the end of the day. Chris, it was so great to have you on the show. We've been looking forward to this. I'm positive we'll have more coming up in the future where we can dive way more into like the details of sales, but wanted to provide an overview of everything and leave you with a few nuggets. It was great to have you on board and really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, it's been a lot of fun. I appreciate you having me and looking forward to doing it again.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, man. Take it easy.
Ready to take the next step? Download our free profitability scorecard to quickly create your own baseline financial assessment and uncover the fastest ways to improve your business. Just go to McFarlinStanford.com/scorecard to get yours today. To learn more about McFarlin Stanford, our best-in-class peer groups, and other services, go to our website at McFarlinStanford.com, and don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. See you next time on The Roots of Success.